and it's also it goes also beyond interest. It is who we are. There's a deeper question here. So if you want to comment on that, otherwise we're just going to delve right into the issues at hand.
Yes, I don't see any contradiction between moral values and interests. We are living in a very global world whereby we, all of us, are transparent to others, so much so this confrontation in Gaza. It is transparent hour to hour, day to day. Just look at the scenes in Al Jazeera in Arabic, and you will see 24 hours a day, you will see all the events relevant to this conflict, some of them horrible. So in a world in which we are seeking for legitimacy, and where our image is also a matter of an interest, there is no, in my mind, any contradiction between value and interest.
Thank you very much for this voice, for speaking these words, Matti. So the Islamic resistance movement Hamas that burst out of the Gaza Strip on October 7 and massacred families and innocent Israelis all over the southwestern Negev was a marginal oppositional Islamist group, terrorist resistance. And maybe you can describe to us how this marginal opposition group that emerged in the early stages of the first Intifada has become such a significant power, dictating strategy today in the region. Maybe just, the milestones. What are we looking at? Who is this enemy Israel is facing now?
Hamas is an offspring, the Palestinian offspring of the Muslim Brothers. The Muslim Brothers usually is very tolerant to the special circumstances of any region. So in the Muslim Brothers, you have what you can call the universal common denominator, as it was mainly founded and devised by Hassan al-Banna in Egypt.
In the 1920s, in the late 1920s. Right?
Yes, at the end of the 20s, a century before. And on the other hand, you have the unique circumstances of any offspring of the Muslim Brothers. What is unique about Hamas is that in addition to the concept, even value of da'wah in Arabic, which refers to the civilian infrastructure of the Muslim Brothers. The civilian means the educational, the welfare, the
preaching, the religious preaching,
schools, kindergarten, and so on and so forth. In addition to it, of course, from a religious perspective, in addition to it, the Hamas has the concept, the value of the specific confrontation with Israel, conflict with Israel, and which is enshrined in the concept of jihad against Israel. You can see it in the Hamas Covenant, 1988, and in a way, you can see it in a later canonical document from 2017, which doesn't replace the covenant, but stands at the side of the covenant.
So Hamas, unlike other Muslim Brother branches in Jordan and Egypt, Hamas is not only an Islamic preaching social political group, it is also a jihad organization.
But here you have to differentiate between Israel, the arena of Israel-Palestine, and the arena of the Arab states. The Hamas does not claim or induce its followers to wage jihad in Jordan or to wage jihad in Egypt. Organization which calls for it is like the Islamic State, what is called Daesh,
ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Yes, Al-Qaeda. They call for internal jihad. But what is unique about the Hamas is that they have to integrate the concept of dawah with the concept of jihad against Israel. Now, the fact that there is a kind of combination between these two, let us say, concepts of values or interests, you can say, also interest, the fact creates a tension, a dissonance between these two concepts. Because if you, for instance, if you try to build the transparent structure, system of dawah, it is open. It is it is very transparent.
So we're talking about kindergarten, schools, mosques.
Yes, yes. If you want to develop it, sometime you have to specify your actions in order that the government or regime which confronts you would not strike the transparent structure. So there is a kind of a tension or a dissonance. If the two goes hand in hand, there is no problem. But what occurs if the two contradicts, or there is a kind of a dissonance between these two values, such as that if you go on with the jihad, you will be punished on the side of the your transparent system, which is very dear to you, the dawah.
So you're describing Hamas civil infrastructure, dawah, preaching, education, welfare, and the jihadist branch. But there's also the, let's say, Palestinian nationalism and the current political situation in which Hamas is no longer only a jihadist or a dawah organization. It is also, until recently, for the last, since 2007, let's say, an organization that is ruling and managing a territory, Gaza.
Yes, Hamas from its beginning, and it was founded on the basis of al-Mujamma al-Islami. Al-Mujamma al-Islami was only exclusively a dawah structure. It was founded by Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, al-Mujamma al-Islami, and it didn't adopt the jihadi way. So much so that I'm talking about in the wake of '67, Israel, formal Israeli officials or officers supported al-Mujamma al-Islami, thinking that the Mujamma al-Islami is a kind of a, let us call it, quiet organization or structure, without understanding that they were only laying the basis for the further basis, which is the jihadi one. But
and Israel supported Hamas in order to counterbalance.
In a way, Israel not supported directly al-Mujamma al-Islami, not supported directly, but by letting it to work openly, to broaden its ranks, to attract people, yes, while comparing it to the activist, even terrorist, Fatah and the Popular Front in those days. They were quiet, they were passive, they were an internal, they put the emphasis on internal development, an educational one, a welfare one. So Israel lets them, Israel thinking, even deluding itself, that it will be sufficient for them to be a quiet organization. But no, the dawah usually, as it was clarified later, the dawah al-Mujamma al-Islami was the basis of the Hamas.
So Matti, the Mujamma al-Islami is starting to be established in 1970s and 1980s following the '67 war. And then the Intifada erupts in the end of '87. And then Hamas in 1988.
Yes, so the foundation of Hamas is Hamas was born in the first Intifada. Hamas was born then. There in '88 it devises its covenant, the mithaq of the Hamas, and later on, in the beginning of the Intifada, the first Intifada, they didn't participate actively. They were even quiet, because they had to reorganize themselves to the military aspect. So and to implement the passage from an educational movement into an activist jihadist movement, with a movement which has two layers. One is educational and the other one is military. So this is Hamas. They laid the Hamas, in contrast to the Mujamma al-Islami, added to it the activist jihadist layer, and within several months, the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam, the military wing of Hamas, was established.
So we're talking about the dawah, the civil, let's say, the religious preaching and welfare. The jihadist, which is the religious preaching is universal, is Islamic, and then you have the jihadist element that is aimed at Israel, and there's also this Palestinian nationalism aspect of the first Intifada that we need to combine into the 1990s, where Hamas is already playing an active role in the Intifada, in labeling itself as a resistance movement.
Yes, in the beginning, the national or nationalist dimension, Palestinian nationalist dimension of Hamas, was a kind of a dependent variable in comparison to Islam. Islam had the primacy, and following it or drawn from it was Palestinian nationalism. But so in such a way, the two were integrated in the covenant of the Hamas. How? But by saying that we are striving to attain a Palestinian state which will be based on the Islamic identity. In this way, they combined the particular national identity with the Islamic universal one.
So if I want to try and bring us to the current affairs, I want to go quickly over the 1990s just to get a glimpse, very shortly. I mean, in the 1990s, Hamas is already an active Palestinian Islamic religious nationalist movement, taking active part in the Palestinian armed struggle from the Israeli perspective, terrorism, labeling itself as an opposition to the peace process and the Oslo Accord. I'll tell you just what I've read in one of Hamas ideologists' book, Ibrahim al-Makadme, saying that we, Hamas, shouldn't attack the Palestinian Authority that is being established, but we should attack Israel, and Israel will destroy the Palestinian Authority. And what he wrote in the 1990s turned out to be correct in the Second Intifada, and Hamas doctrine prevailed in the beginning of the 21st century as Hamas led the armed struggle during the Second Intifada and prevailed in 2006 in the Palestinian elections. So there's this huge shift from the late 80s to the early 20 years fast forward. Hamas is one of the most popular organizations leading Palestinian national movement. Yeah, maybe you can comment on that, maybe taking into account the tension between the dogmatism of an Islamic jihadist organization and the need of Hamas now to become a pragmatic political actor.
Look, I'm not sure that I accept the adjectives that you mentioned.
Okay.
Let me return to your first question. How Hamas broadened its attraction amongst the Palestinians. The Hamas, from the beginning, was, and it is enshrined in its covenant and in all its history until today, Hamas was totally against any political, and still, any political settlement with Israel. When I say political settlement, it means a kind of mutual concessions. For instance, in return for a Palestinian state side by side with Israel, the Hamas is not ready until this very hour to give Israel recognition, security concessions, a concession on the return to Palestine. It means to the state of Israel, to the territory of the state of Israel. Hamas is ready even from the beginning. And it was devised or phrased directly by Sheikh Ahmad Yassin. Hamas is ready for a kind of an off time, a kind of, you can call it armistice, but only temporary one, and to give Israel some time, some off time, and only that, in order to attain a Palestinian state side by side. But this is not the end of the conflict. So, why? And here, okay. Why? Here, nationalism and Islam is combined in Hamas theory or ideology, because Palestine, all Palestine, from the river to the sea, is a waqf, is an endowment, and nobody can implement any transaction. And for us, we're talking about political transaction on this waqf territory, endowment. So, because
yes. There's no religiously, there's no possibility for a religious for a territorial compromise. So how come Hamas became so popular and strong? And what was Israel's role in this? Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yes, here we have to address the Israel attitude along, let us say, along various governments. Hamas broadened its popularity among Palestinians in a way by the help and support, sometimes unwittingly, of Israel. And here you can differentiate between two main stages or periods. The first period from 88 to 2005, Hamas attained popularity or broadened its ranks among Palestinians, even those who are not fundamentalist, only traditional, not fundamentalist, not identified with its Muslim Brotherhood ideology, because the Fatah, the PLO, the PA, Palestinian Authority, couldn't convince the Palestinian audience that its strategy, the political strategy vis-a-vis Israel, is relevant, is achievable, is feasible.
So it didn't bear any fruits.
Yes, so from those people who joined the ranks of Hamas or joined to support Hamas, told themselves that explained it in such a way. The Fatah talks about political pragmatism. Now, from only pragmatic considerations of utility, pure utility, pragmatism doesn't work. This pragmatism
because the peace process didn't
because
make it better.
Israel doesn't respond.
Because since Oslo to the second Intifada, Israel doubled the settlers, the number of settlers.
Israel, what I'm saying, look, I'm not dealing, I'm not entering all the details, but as you know, during the 90s, we have a Oslo process, but Oslo process was a temporary, an interim agreement. And in due time, it had to pass or to cross the line toward a permanent political
the failure of Oslo strengthened Hamas up to 2005. What is the second stage?
The second stage from 2005 onwards is that if before 2005 Hamas gained from the absence of any real advancement of the political process toward partition, Hamas gained from that. Yes, it was a kind of how do you call it in Hebrew? Brerat mechdal, a kind of a fault, yes, default a choice. So the fact that pragmatism failed, from this Hamas gained. But from 2005, the support of Israel becomes more active, not passive, but active.
Israel support of Hamas? I'm trying to understand.
The support of Israel to Hamas began to be an active one. Before that, it was passive.
So maybe you can explain that a little bit.
By default, before that, it was by default, by the fact that Israel didn't advance the political process toward a permanent settlement. From 2005, it became active or more active because Israel was ready to withdraw without any return, any concession from Gaza Strip. And what
even though the Palestinian Authority wanted
what was the thinking of the ordinary a Palestinian? It doesn't have to be, let us say, great thinker to see that, to have the proof that pragmatism doesn't pay, while implementing force and violence like Hamas pays a lot.
So the fact that Israel withdrew from Gaza following the second Intifada portrayed Hamas as a victor and strengthened its popularity. And ever since 2005, let's say 2006, 2007, Israel has been actively supporting this policy of separating the West Bank from Gaza and supporting Hamas. This is what you're trying to say, supporting the Hamas regime in Gaza in order to prevent an overall agreement and the formation of a Palestinian state. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
In order to drive a wedge between Gaza Strip, the regime in Gaza Strip, and the regime in the West Bank, and by doing it to torpedo any real political process which will bring about a Palestinian state in the integral territory, which is the language of Oslo, political integrity of Gaza and the West Bank, in spite of the geographical split.
Yeah, but how does that play into the Hamas, in the interest of Hamas? I mean, in 2010, let's say, Hamas is enjoying this split as it is establishing its rule over the Gaza Strip. But what's happening in 2020, 2021?
No, it was in 2007, Hamas occupied or conquered the regime, the full regime in Gaza, and wiped out Fatah and Dahalan, headed by Dahalan there. But before that, I want to give you an example. In the beginning of 2005, in January 2005, Abu Mazen was elected to be president and got 62 percentage of those who
he was a sole candidate for presidency.
Of those who participated in the elections. It was Hamas didn't dare placing a candidate against Abu Mazen because its defeat was clear-cut. Before that, they knew it. Now, this was in January. In September, when Israel is implementing its one-sided, unilateral, rejecting any mutual agreement with Abu Mazen, while Abu Mazen is contributing to what is called the security accommodation or coordination with Israel. So this was, by it, Israel killed the political strategy of Abu Mazen. And Abu Mazen personally.
I mean, Hamas by default.
Not by default, actively. By giving Gaza, actually, without any concessions, giving it to Hamas.
So Hamas becomes a political party, a political power. Why would they do such, one might say, a suicidal attack on Israel once they have obtained political control over the Gaza Strip? Why can't they just enjoy political power and exercise their sovereignty and instead, I don't know, like people say, make Gaza the thriving strip of land? Instead, they go out and attack Israel, knowing that the Israeli response would be harsh. What should we make of that? When did Hamas change from this political sovereignty and rule over Gaza to what we have today, an active war after these atrocities? What happened?
But here you are jumping too forward, because before that, I will tell you, you have, I mentioned the one-sided withdrawal, but later, when Netanyahu came to power.
In 2009.
Yes, he felt or saw in it an opportunity to deepen the wedge between Hamas regime in Gaza and PA regime in the West Bank, and by it, actually abrogating any chance for real political process. And he was doing it by letting Qatar streaming money. And I'm talking about billions or milliards I'm talking about at least 3 to 5 until today, 3 to 5 billion American dollar.
So this serves Netanyahu?
A great part of them through the airport of Lod, a great part of it. In a way, I will tell you, it was a kind of protection money, in order to keep them still and quiet. Now, but we know that in the meantime, there were off confrontations. But after any confrontation, they received more money. So now,
you know, Matti, I have a friend that has family in Gaza, and he just visited Gaza last year, coming back saying, the economic situation is wonderful, workers are coming to Israel, Hamas' interest is to continue receiving money from Qatar and letting Palestinian workers from Israel come to work, from Gaza to work in Israel, and they're enjoying an economic thrive. This was the concept in Israel, that Hamas and Gaza want to continue this thriving reality of economic cooperation. But
it was a flawed conception. Maybe he's your friend, but he doesn't understand nothing of the Hamas.
Obviously.
I will tell you how. I tell you why. Can you imagine, if you follow this rationale, so do you imagine that Hamas was forgetting Al-Aqsa? This is what your friend is saying, that they are forgetting Al-Aqsa. It means that they are forgetting their Islamic faith, according to their interpretation. This is what
they didn't want to become a contractor of the Israeli control as the Palestinian Authority become.
Look, if Netanyahu wanted to transform them into a stupid idiot, the opposite occurred in the 7th of October.
Okay.
They transformed Netanyahu into the stupid idiot.
In the way that
I must say. So what I'm saying is this: the Hamas aspires to all Palestine, because all Palestine is enshrined as a sacred territory, as a waqf in the Quran.
And why now? Because now Netanyahu is about to close a deal with the Saudis, just marginalizing the Palestinian cause.
But you are jumping. I mean, too forward.
The time is pushing.
Yes. No, but we have to. But I think that I have to explain it. the Hamas used its stronghold in Gaza, or meant to use it as a jumping board, as a springboard towards the West, first of all, the West Bank, and to Jerusalem, and in its midst, Al-Aqsa. For them, always, Palestine is one unit, including what is the state of Israel. For a minute, they were ready to go with Netanyahu for, let us say, a part of the way in order to strengthen their hold in Gaza, but to use it as a springboard in due time to the West Bank and to the state of Israel.
So they were exploiting, while Netanyahu thought that he is actually marginalizing the Palestinians and signing peace accords with the Gulf and the Arab world, they were actually exploiting Netanyahu's strategic blindness to strengthen themselves, and actually, as they just did, hurt the Israeli normalization with the Arab world, bringing the Palestinian cause into the front stage in such a horrible way, such a painful way, bloody way.
But I have to, because it is absent. What I'm saying, what I mean to say, is absent in the interpretation. I mean, the current interpretation, because I will tell you, people are not doing the work. When I say are not doing the work, they don't.
You're talking about who? Which people are not doing?
I'm talking about those who see themselves as experts on this issue. I expect those to first of all to make an effort and immerse themselves in the material of Hamas, in the websites of Hamas, in the books of Hamas, and so on and so forth. And I can say,
if they would have done that, what would they have learned? What would they have known?
I will tell you. So, at the end of 2020, there was a kind of a divergency within Hamas. Divergency, I'm not talking of a split or of a, let us say, a quarrel, but there were two schools. One school headed by Aruri. Yes, who is the deputy of Ismail Haniyeh as the head of the political branch of Hamas, or section of Hamas. Aruri, who lives now, he was in Qatar and then moved to Beirut. Aruri was in favor of integrating Hamas into coming elections in the territories, in the West Bank and Gaza.
So there's this Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas,
not Ismail
Haniyeh, that are into politicization.
Yes, Aruri, in spite of the fact that Aruri was, a very prominent, when he was in the West Bank, he was a very prominent member of El-Qassam.
Yeah. But let's present the second school of thought.
But so, on the one side, you can call it the school of containment.
Okay.
On the other side, the school of confrontation, headed by Mohammed Deif. Mohammed Deif was, as a pure military man, was against it. He was only for the Mukawama, the military resistance, as the only way, the exclusive way to cope with Israel.
And Mohammed Deif is a man who paid the price. His body is shattered. He lost his wife, his children in the armed struggle. He is a man of a pure jihadist.
He is one of the founders, the original founders of. He is now approaching his 60s. He was one of the founders of Izzadin al-Qassam, of the military branch. Now, but the compromise was, first of all, let us try Aruri schools. Aruri approach, and if it doesn't succeed as the default position will be Mohammed Deif. So they
understand if this was in 2020, in 2021, Israel canceled or did not enable the Palestinian elections.
Yes.
The spring Ramadan 2021 skirmishes between Israel and Gaza erupted, and maybe at this point there was a transition from Aruri to Mohammed Deif school.
No, Israel was not against, let us say, actually was not outspoken in rejecting elections, but it was in quite a way outspoken in rejection the participation of East Jerusalem Palestinians in the elections.
Knowing that no one can accept that.
Yes, even in 1996, the first elections during Oslo, the arrangement was that East Jerusalem Palestinians would be able to vote even on the outskirts of Jerusalem or through electronic way. But
to simplify the equation, so there was this struggle between these two schools of thoughts in 2020, and we saw that in 2021 the political containment school failed, and probably at this point the Palestinian school of the Mohammed Deif jihadist school became the prominent and started planning the attack.
Yes. So the school of Auri failed, and the default option was the winning one was the school of Muhammad Deif, and from 21, the beginning of 21, even before the confrontation in May, you remember the quite main confrontation. It is called in Hebrew the guardians of the wall, Shomer Chomot, the guardian of the wall. It was even before that. Muhammad Deif won this internal struggle and began to train and to implement the plan that actually was devised in 2016, but it was not relevant. It wasn't considered as, let us say, actual or feasible. But now Muhammad Deif went all out to
occupy the Jewish, the Israeli kibbutzim and settlements around the Gaza.
Yes, this was the plan, but this plan was drawn into a shelf in those times.
So this plan was planned already almost 8 years ago, and it was taken out of the drawer after 2021 and started to become operative.
Yes, like many plans that you have, that the army prepares and so on and so forth.
You wrote in 2021, following the events, you wrote an article saying that now Hamas has changed the paradigm and it is no longer adopting the split between Gaza and the West Bank. I remember that article published in the Forum for Regional Thinking. So if you realize that this concept was completely missed by Israel, by the intelligence, by the government.
Yes, totally, because the superiority was given to the flawed, wrong conception, and it portrayed all the other indications that were contrary or contradictory to this conception.
You're talking about conceptions. In October 6th, I would have said that Israel is a regional power that has no existential threat, that it defeated the Palestinian cause, and that I don't see how Palestinian statehood and equality is in the foreseeable future. If you'd talk to me in October 8th, you would see a frightened Iran, thinking that Israel is under an existential threat that we've completely missed, a conventional threat from the north, a conventional threat from the south, not the nuclear Iran, and a threat of an inner front in the West Bank inside Israel. There's a completely different reality that shattered in one Saturday morning. Looking forward, taking into account the Arab summit in Riyadh just days ago, what is the horizon that you see after so many years inside the system, based on your knowledge, your experience, your understanding of reality? People are almost anxious, I would say almost hopeless. Is there an opportunity embedded in this horrible moment we are in?
First of all, I want to say, that I myself was not surprised by the intention and the implementation of Hamas, because I'm talking strategically. I didn't know the date, of course, the specific date, but I wasn't surprised, as you said, in my several articles before the great event of 7th of October. Actually, I also mentioned or indicated to this to the big trends in my books during the 90s and the 2000s, but I was very surprised from the dysfunctionality of the intelligence and the army in the critical date. This for me was a shock to see this dysfunctionality. I wouldn't believe it.
Let's not into the operative conversation of the military straitjacket, because it's true that the army failed and the intelligence failed. But right now, we are all focusing only on the military response, as we say, the military straitjacket, right? And I'm trying to ask you about thinking beyond, or the day after the war, or the day after Israel is occupied Hamas, occupied Gaza, or abolished Hamas, if this is even possible. So maybe you can say something about this idea, this goal of destroying and defeating and abolishing Hamas, and maybe also talking about this future, the horizon, the day after the war, and the Arab regional context.
We can weaken Hamas, but we cannot abolish Hamas.
That's very important, because everyone in Israel is now currently talking about destroying Hamas.
We can a lot Hamas, but we cannot abolish Hamas. I'm quite sure that Hamas is now trying to build to rehabilitate its organization in the south of Gaza. I will mention you that Yahya Sinwar and Muhammad Deif are from the south of Gaza, are from Khan Yunis. Maybe they are there now. They know the territory, they have the support of the population, and so on and so forth. So, as you know, Israel addresses or differentiates between the north of Gaza and the south of Gaza. And of course, they would try to protect themselves under the umbrella of those Nazichun. It means those who were displaced from the north of Gaza, which fled to the south of it. So there is no question. But
so Israel,
more than that, I will tell you, they are using the strategic weapon of captives in order to survive.
239 hostages.
In order to survive,
Millions,
as an organization. Because if you want to make a deal with someone, you need an address. And if you need an address, Hamas has to survive. I mean, this is a contradiction. The contradiction. Yeah. Yes, of course, you can release them by military means. But okay, it's very difficult. I don't see it. And you need someone to deal with. Now, about I will tell you, how do we extract ourselves from this situation?
Yes.
I don't have a monopoly on the circumstances, on the reality, but I'm trying to figure out, according to my, let us say, learning experience and so on. The sworn enemy of the Hamas is a political settlement. From its very first days, from its origins, this is a sworn enemy. They made their utmost to torpedo it, even through suicide operations, as you know. Suicide operations. In a way, you can say that even 7th of October was a kind of suicide operation, because I'm talking, yes, it is not 100% suicide, but it is 90% suicide. I mean, and everyone...
So I can understand from what you're saying that the way to weaken Hamas is obviously to promote a deal or a peace agreement with whom? With the Palestinian Authority?
Yes, because the weakness and the corruption of the Palestinian Authority is a consequence of the total failure of its political strategy. You have to help them to rehabilitate themselves. And I will tell you, according to and I'm basing myself on the credible surveys of public opinion, but it is also according to my experience. If there is political expectancy, real and imminent, most of the Palestinians, including in Gaza, would support this light at the end of the tunnel. They would support it. So we have nobody would fill up the void in Gaza in the absence of a real political context. The PA, the Palestinian Authority, would not return to Gaza on Israeli tanks and then planes. Forget it. The Arabs, headed by Saudi Arabia and others, would not contribute to rehabilitate economically Gaza without a real political and imminent, feasible political process. So
Hamas has actually brought the Palestinian case back to the table by doing this horrible operation in October 7. Maybe the Netanyahu's government is also not in a way similar to Hamas. Ben Gvir and Smotrich are also not partners for a territorial political resolution.
You are right. Regretfully, the Hamas and the government of Israel, headed by Netanyahu, were, I can call it, antagonistic allies. As far as the political settlement, or let us say the Arab, for instance, and a specific example, the Arab Peace Initiative is concerned. Towards that, both of them rejected it out maybe of different reasons, but the outcome, and this is what is important in history, the outcome was identical. Now, also what you see, that they are also allies as far as the rejection of the return of the PA, of the Palestinian Authority, under, of course, a political umbrella to Gaza.
So
both of them rejected.
So the way out is accepting regional coalition support of an overall peace agreement with the Palestinian Authority, which will also require, obviously, a change of government in Israel. And American Arab patronage, this is more or less the future that you envision, the positive way out of the current situation?
First of all, it must originate from the President of the United States. Okay. He has to give a presidential address on this issue, specifying specifying the process, the need for political process, political context, which joins the Arab Peace Initiative,
led by Saudi Arabia.
Now Saudi Arabia will join forces with it. The Arab world would join forces with it. The Islamic world would join forces with it, as it is phrased in the last decisions
in the summit.
To the summit 2 days ago, which was for the first time in the history of the summits, it was a joint Arab and Islamic conference. If you look at the announcement, at the formal announcement, you will see a great emphasis on the Arab Peace Initiative.
So
yes, so it must be Europe must join forces to it. Yes, this is a way. This is a way, because what happened is that if before the 7th of October, the government of Israel played between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority by looking at Hamas as an asset, yes, as an asset, in order to, of course, to
perpetuate the split, perpetuate the conflict, not reaching an agreement. I want to address.
So if it is now they can't play the game, because if they are making an effort to weaken, or even in their words, to abolish Hamas, yes, they wouldn't be able to play the game between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. Now a void is created.
Yeah.
What does it mean, a void? That Israel stays there. If Israel stays there, we are doomed. I hope not, but it is my prediction, realist prediction, that we will be submerged in a kind of Vietnamization or Lebanonization in Gaza, and with many casualties, with a kind of a guerrilla war, and which we wouldn't be able to use our technological and military superiority. Now we must support the endeavor to build a political context, and under this context, the PA and the Arab world and the Islamic world would be mobilized to support Gaza. United States would be able to do it, and it will help to solve the question not only of Gaza, but also of the Palestinian question or issue, including in the West Bank.
So, Matti, thank you very much. The equation is very clear. Either we are submerging in the quicksand of Vietnamization and Lebanization of Israeli presence in Gaza, or we move forward with an international and regional umbrella towards a resolution, be it a two-state solution, a confederation, or this way or another. And I want to address a few quick questions that were brought up. So first of all, the Egyptian and the Lebanese, and maybe even the Jordanian, the immediate neighbors we have, the context of Egypt, for example. Someone asked about why isn't Egypt accepting Palestinian refugees? I know you have a very accurate answer on that because we discussed the issue, so maybe you want to address that.
It's a traditional and relevant position of the Egyptians that they don't want to relocate the Palestinians from Gaza in Sinai.
What's on the stake here?
I will tell you. They understand that, first of all, that receiving this population in Sinai will cancel the Palestinian issue. And
is Egypt willing to threaten the peace agreement with Israel in order to?
If Israel would force it on the Egyptians, it means if Israel would try to implement a kind of, in Arabic they say tahjir. Tahjir means evacuation, a kind of a enforced evacuation to Sinai. This is the end of the treaty with Egypt. If Israel
this is a very clear answer. When people talk about relocating 500,000, 1 million, 2 million Palestinians from Gaza in Egypt, the immediate response is no longer Israel, the end of the peace with Egypt.
It is considered, and I'm quoting them, as a declaration of war on Egypt. And more than that, also Jordan, we would see it as a precedent to what would occur in the West Bank towards the East Bank. And Jordan would cancel the treaty with Israel. It would see it, and I'm quoting the foreign minister of Jordan, it would see it as a declaration of war. So okay. if you want to declare war on these two most important states on the border with Israel, let us do it.
it's very clear. Is there anything you have to say about the Lebanese, from Hezbollah to Mikati's peace accord, the Lebanese context?
Look, in Lebanon still, what I see is a kind of still mutual deterrence. Mutual deterrence. It exists since 2006. Of course, it is a very tense and delicate mutual deterrence. So, and it can be, of course, it can be changed on a minute. For instance, if a rocket by the Hezbollah hits civilians, let us say, gathering, and so on and so forth, it can lead to a war. So it can be changed. But both of them are trying to, let us say, to dance on a very delicate rope, let us say, delicate rope. And still it exists. You have to remember also that Hezbollah is deterred by the American force on the sea, in the sea, the American ships in the sea, because they know that if they initiate a war, the rockets of the American would be stricken against them. So it is an added deterrence to the equation. But yes, it is very delicate. I'm reading word by word the speeches of Hassan Nasrallah, and what I see that he's trying still to dance on this delicate rope.
A question that came up from the audience now several times: the Palestinian Authority. So some people here, that's our time. We're going to push a few more minutes before we end. The really last question, and then maybe we can wrap it up. The Palestinian Authority, is it a partner? Some of the people writing in the chat brought up fears that the Palestinian Authority is a terrorist authority, like the government is saying. Others say that the 7th of October will reoccur in the West Bank. So are they a partner?
Oh, it's a very long issue, and as you know, I dedicated to it full-length books of more than 500 pages.
But we have to do it in a nutshell, of course, right?
Okay, so yes, it is a partner. I will tell you why. I tell you why. The Palestinian Authority accepted Resolution 242. Later, the Arab Peace Initiative recognized the state of Israel in Oslo. Arab Peace Initiative, the Quartet, a plan which was meant to implement gradually the peace with Israel. They accepted it without any hesitation or any escaping clause. Israel raised 14 remarks, which I'll tell you, all of them are conditions. And one of them is that Israel rejects it because it is based on the Arab Peace Initiative. The Arab Peace Initiative, you have to learn in what is included in this one page: the end of the conflict, the end of the return to the state of Israel, because they speak there, I mean, in so many words, about agreed upon a solution. Agreed upon, it must be agreed upon Israel. And if it is, so Israel has a veto power, de facto veto power in it. And it speaks about normalization with Israel. Israel, since 2002, almost 22 years, ignores, rejects this plan. This is the great victory of the state of Israel. The wall of iron.
In quotation marks, I assume you're meaning.
No, the Arab Peace Initiative is the greatest victory of Israel.
Ignored by Israel.
If Israel recognized it.
Okay. This is it's a very clear question, and you're saying the Palestinian.
I will tell you. You remember the expression of Jabotinsky, the iron of wall. The iron of wall succeeded in 2002, and then every year when they raised it or endorsed it, including the Islamic states, in exception of Iran.
So
but Iran was isolated, totally isolated among the Islamic states. All of them accepted it. So
Jabotinsky, the founder of revisionism of the Israeli right wing in the 1920s and 30s, said that Israel should build an iron wall, and only when the Arabs will forsake their aspirations to wipe Israel out of the map, they will be able to accept it. And in 2002, what you're saying is the Arabs accepted Israel, and for the last 22 years, Israel has been avoiding a peace agreement, even though Olmert for a moment tried to negotiate. At least in the last 15 years, under Netanyahu, instead of moving toward an agreement with the Palestinian Authority, Netanyahu encouraged the split, while Hamas actually played Netanyahu, as we saw, hurting Israel not only strategically, but also, massacring, killing, kidnapping. Hamas was always there as a bitter enemy of Israel. At the point that it struck Israel was a strategic moment, and when Israel was weakened from within. I think it's a clear message.
I have to add something.
Yes,
one point.
I want to wrap it up, so make your point, and then I'll ask you the last question before.
Yes, concerning the last question, I happen to be the advisor of the heads of the Shabak in the days
the internal intelligence of Israel,
when the coordination, security coordination with the Palestinians was established. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you that 50% of our success, of our effectivity, was contributed by the Palestinian intelligence. I'm not exaggerating. This was the reason that a year before the Intifada, until the eruptions of the second Intifada, we had in 1 year, 99, only one casualty, only one, and not in suicide bomb. In 98, 4. How did it happen? It means that we can cooperate, we can coordinate, provided that they have a political expectancy. If they don't have it, they will not endeavor to be your stupid idiot. They wouldn't plan to be your stupid. But in spite of the fact that for many years they played such a role.
So, thank you very much. Frustrating to realize that we were so close already in the end of the 1990s, and here we are, almost 25 years afterwards in such a situation no one could really imagine. We both live in Jerusalem in the same neighborhood. We understand the level of anxiety and despair our society is now under. How, really, the last comment before I will share with you my understanding, my conclusion from this conversation, just to understand, how would you de-escalate the current situation and get out of it? Just very clear, simple. Like, how would you de-escalate and reach this positive scenario that you've described? Because you described two ways: one a very negative one, and another positive.
Look,
how do you come out of this straight?
In a very concise and a very brief way. A deep crisis can yield big opportunities, because big crises change awareness, change consciousness, can change consciousness. So what I'm saying is that big crisis creates big opportunity. And about the opportunity, I tried to develop. I mean, in answer to your former questions, I tried to speak out about this.
So, if I sum up what I understand from the conversation with you, and before I do that, I want to go back to my initial remark that when you quoted Spinoza and we talked about values and interests. As an Israeli, liberal Israeli, that was an advocate for a peaceful resolution based on equality for many years, I want to make it very clear that me, of course, my wife, my children, we are not legitimate target of resistance and terrorism. And I'm saying it in English because maybe people from the world are listening and the international community, and there is a whole debate there about, this binary discourse of pro or anti. If I'm anti-occupation, I have to be pro-Palestinian and thus support what Hamas did. No, we are not legitimate targets of resistance, not our children, not our elderly, not us as innocent civilians. And this is a very clear stand. At the same time, there is still an encounter between the Israeli interest and the moral thing to do, which is to promote a peaceful resolution based on equality, because the Palestinians also entitled to dignity and respect and life. This doesn't contradict. I mean, we have to secure our existence, and at the same time, the only way to do it is by promoting a resolution that is enabling the Palestinians to have their own, state, this way or another, a confederation, be it a two-state solution, be it any other acceptable political platform. Now, from this entire conversation, I understand that at this current moment, we are in a strait, and there are two ways forward. One is to be drawn into a military swamp in which Israel is controlling Gaza, like the war, Milchemet HaAtasha, I forgot how to say it in English, this war that Israel... Attrition war in the 60s and 70s, where there were casualties, constant casualties, like in Lebanon, like in Vietnam. Israel is controlling Gaza, sinking in this swamp, losing legitimacy, and maybe internally under this state of urgency, Israel is also changing from within. The radical, the extreme are becoming stronger, and the other alternative, the other direction, has to be forward toward some kind of an overall resolution in which the Palestinian Authority is willing to enter and take the Gaza Strip in the context of an overall agreement backed by a regional Saudi-led Arab coalition under American patronage and the European Union. And us Israelis need to make a choice. We're not the only ones here, of course, that there are Palestinians in the equation, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority. And I think it is also such a position that fostering the lives and the security of civilians in Israel and in Gaza, in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, is the only moral position that overrules and goes against any situation in which a child is facing a gun or a bomb. And the best way is toward a political resolution and a compromise. And I think we were there already many years ago. And after all this blood, in a way, we are back into the same place. Only now, as you said, great challenges and big crises also contain big opportunities. So maybe time will tell. Looking forward, we will know to make the right choice, and our friends from around the world will back us, Israelis and Palestinians, in our way forward towards a resolution, an agreement that is honoring the security and the dignity of Israelis and Palestinians alike. Thank you very much for this, Matti, and thank you everyone for joining us, for staying with us throughout this conversation. You're all welcome to check out my website. There will be more activities, more open discussions. There's a course in Hebrew about Hamas. There's a course I'm about to publish soon about the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount. So there's more activity coming up. Yeah, thank you. Good night, Matti.
Thank you, you all, and hoping for the best.